Today on episode number 341 of the School of Podcasting's morning announcements, I got a quick podcast success story that shows you how building a relationship with the audience can pay off. I've got a little update on some of my favorite themes that I'm using, one new one that's free that's really, really cool, and we're going to talk a smidge about that whole patent lawsuit, but we've got a phenomenal interview about podcast promotion with Max Flight. Wait till you hear this. Get a pen and pencil and paper. Do it.
The School of Podcasting with Dave Jackson.
Podcasting since 2005. I am your personal podcast coach, Dave Jackson. Yeah, that's me. And I am so very, very happy. I'm overjoyed. I am that you are here to talk about podcasting. I'm going to help you avoid the podcasting pitfalls. We're going to talk about, really on this show, we talk about all things from planning to recording to producing, making it look pretty, making a little money. We got it all right here because, you know, there's one place on the internet. If you're looking for all things podcasting, it's schoolofpodcasting.com. I would love to have you joining on the conversation. You can email me, Dave at schoolofpodcasting.com. You can call in your comments, courtesy of podcastvoicemail.com. It's 888-563-3228. You can leave a comment on our blog at schoolofpodcasting.com. You can even use the little voicemail button. And everything that I'm talking about today, you can find at schoolofpodcasting.com/341. I want to share a podcast success story today. And I always try to start off the show with one of these. And this is one of my own. I always talk about really how you make money with your podcast is through the relationship you build with your audience. And I've been doing the Logical Weight Loss podcast now, sadly, for 3 years. And I'm just now starting to lose weight. And, but that's actually half the reason why my audience likes me, because I'm failing just as much as they are. But it's interesting. So I've made some money with that podcast, not a ton, nothing to, retire on or anything like that. But to give you a little story here, I did some work for David Greenwalt, who does Leanness Lifestyle University. And he has a podcast as well. And we got to know each other. And Dave's a super just buff. He's a certified fitness guru kind of guy, super nice guy. And I generally consider him a friend. And so he does this thing once a year where it basically is you are hiring him and his staff as an accountability partner. And they basically teach you the skills how to lose weight. Well, I set this up to promote him on my podcast. So yes, I was promoting my competition, but I wasn't promoting my competition. I was promoting my friend, somebody I believe in. And he got this email. He says, David, because that's his name too, I just finished listening to Dave Jackson's Logical Weight Loss podcast, and I heard your interview, and less than 30 minutes later, I am a student. Now, Dave's class is thorough, and it's definitely worth every penny. It is $97 a month. But if you're like me, I'm spending that's about $3 a day. And I spent about that on Mountain Dew and peanuts and Snickers bars. So I'm going through this as well. Again, I don't recommend things that I wouldn't do myself. And the person goes on to say how he basically has gained weight over the last couple of years. He said, I started a podcast about my weight loss journey, and he's been at a plateau for a couple of weeks. He actually Dave didn't give me the guy's name, but he just said, hey, he got a referral today and that we're going to be doing good things, because here's the fun thing. And again, this isn't why I promoted this. It just so happened that Dave had one, and that is he had an affiliate program, which is basically online sales. And I made $56 on that. Pretty cool, right? And all I did was promote something that I heard about, I liked, I believed in, and it just so happened that it happened to be a friend of mine as well. So kudos, right? So if you're interested in this, go over to logicalloss.com/LS180 if you're looking to lose weight, and I'll actually earn more commission on that. But it is the power of podcasting there. It's that influence you have over your audience. And keep in mind, the first part of that story was what? I've been podcasting to that audience for 3 years. I have no idea how long this guy's been listening to me, but it's not going to happen overnight, because first you have to build the audience, and then you have to build that relationship. Next up, I want to do a little update. I have in the past said great things about Thesis, And in the recent past, I've said not so great things about Thesis. When they upgraded to 2.0, I basically think they wrecked the theme. So I switched to iThemes Builder. If you go to schoolofpodcasting.com/builder, I switched to that only to find that it had a bug in it. Not a huge bug, but I'm glad to say that if you go over there, you can get just the core foundation builder for $80. Again, not super cheap, but definitely cheaper than hiring somebody to make your customized website. They have fixed that. Basically, there was a style manager where you can actually go in and say how many columns, and do you want it green, and what do you want the footer to look like, what do you want the sidebar to look like. It's almost, on one hand, you can really affect about anything on that. And if you want to see Builder in action as of February 2013, go over to healingourmarriage.com. Now, while they were working out the bugs with that one, and they've got great support over at iThemes, I was playing along with what's called page lines. Now, the cool thing about page lines, if you go into your WordPress, go into themes and go add new and do a search for page lines is a free theme that you can upgrade to. But for a while, I ran the page lines theme on my website. And I got to tell you, for a free theme, it was pretty stinking cool. You can do all sorts of drag and drop stuff. A little bit of a learning curve. I'm going to say about a 20-minute learning curve, but it's pretty intuitive. And if you're looking for a free theme that's pretty flexible, just check out Page Lines. I will hope to have a YouTube video about this one in the future, along with Builder. Again, right now, Builder is I like it, but it's a close, it's a close call there. And being that the fact that Page Lines is free, boy, that's hard to pass up. Now, if you want the Super Jumbo Deluxe version of Page Lines, it's $139. I realize if you're looking for a cool, customizable theme that's free, check out Page Lines. You can just go to schoolofpodcasting.com/Page Lines. Or like I said, if you're in WordPress, just go into Add Themes and search for it, because that's the name of the theme. It's Page Lines. Next up, you have probably heard about this patent thing. That's the technical term. And the lawsuit against Adam Carolla and how stuff works. And I'd like to give you my take on that. I do my best not to worry about things that I have absolutely no control over it. We actually got a patent lawyer to send out a message on a Google group, and I will put a link to this. If you want to try to spell this, it's GRONHOLM, that's his last name, I believe, .com/podcast_patent, which a Y. Again, you can just go out to schoolofpodcasting.com/341. I'll put a link to it. And basically he says it's not a done deal. It is something that maybe we should be worried about. So if you are interested in this, I'll put a link to it. But right now it's in the legal realm, and there's nothing I can do about it. So I'm just going to kind of wait and see. And if you hang around me long enough, you will hear me say the phrase, I will jump off that bridge when I get to it. And that's the technology I'm taking on that one. It's just not... a lot of people are talking about the Volo Media patent. This is not the Volo Media patent. And this guy goes into it deep. But basically, I'm not really that worried about it at this point, because there's nothing I can do about it. Next up, I got to tell you, I was so pumped to meet my next guest. And boy, he just brought the gold. And it's Max Flight. We've been playing schedule tag for really the better part of a month and a half. And I was so happy. And man, this guy's just such a nice guy. Great insights. And without further ado, talking a little podcast promotion and other points in between, here's my interview with Max Flight. All right, well, joining me via Skype after we've had a lot of fun playing Ring Around the Rosie and I don't know, whatever else you want to call it, but he does a couple different podcasts. He does podcastingpassion.com, but his original one was Airplane Geeks. You can find that at airplanegeeks.com. And I've bumped into him numerous times in different forms and such, so I'm really glad to have him on the show. Max Flight, thanks for coming on the show.
Oh, Dave, it's a real joy to talk with you finally, Skype to Skype, as it were. I've been a big fan of School of Podcasting and learned a lot from you, and you're actually one of my favorite podcasters about podcasting.
Well, thank you, sir. I deeply appreciate that. And well, tell us a little bit about, let's just start off with let's just let you pimp away. Tell us about your podcast.
Oh, Airplane Geeks. It's we've been doing it for about 4.5 years now. There was no grand plan at the beginning. Some guy that I'd never heard of sent me an email one day and said, "You want to join me?" Because he's starting up a new podcast. And at that point, I was just a consumer of podcasts. But I thought, okay, well, I don't know anything about podcasting. And he said, well, he did. He's got a domain name. He knows WordPress. All I had to do was show up for 1 hour a week, and we could launch this podcast. So I figured, okay, well, we'll give it a shot. And it worked, and it took off. And 4 years later, we're still going strong. A little bit different cast of co-hosts, but we're still going strong. Now,
how did you handle like switching co-hosts? Obviously, somebody, I have no idea here. I'm going to guess probably baby, married, something happened that they could no longer do the podcast. How did you kind of go through that transition?
Well, that's pretty interesting. The guy who came up with the idea, the originator, the guy that I got to know, after about I'll say about a year, he had to move on. Some big changes in his life. He said to me, Max, well, I'll leave it up to you. We could just kill the thing now, or if you want to carry it on, go ahead. And I said, silly me. Okay, I'll try to pick it up. So I had to learn all the the podcast production stuff, but there was no way I was going to carry it on myself, because by myself I'm kind of boring. So I needed some co-hosts. And what I did was I kind of reached back into the catalog of guests we'd had on the podcast. And thought of a couple of guys that could each bring something different to the show, and approached them and said, "Hey, you want to give this a try and join me as co-host?" So the two of them agreed to it. Silly them, and started up, and off we went. So it was, and it's been great ever since.
Well, see, that's the great thing that I'm kind of learning as I deal with more people, especially with multiple hosts. Is so many people want to get people that think just like them. And I think really the better shows are the ones where you have difference of opinions. Like you said, you found people that brought different things to the table. And that really, I think, helps makes for a more rounded show.
Absolutely. And we really spanned the whole spectrum. One of the two guys was a college kid. I'll call him a kid at the time, just entering his freshman year in college. The other guy is, I guess you'd call him sort of semi-retired. He'd been a pilot. He still is a pilot, but he'd had a couple other jobs in the aviation industry and kind of acts as a consultant now. But, a guy that's, a very mature guy. And so we had this, this dynamic going in the shows between sort of youth and enthusiasm and sometimes, right, kind of goofy, stuff versus, sort of the mature guy who has had the experience. And, that creating a dynamic like that makes things interesting and keeps the audience really engaged.
Absolutely. And then your other podcast is Podcasting Passion. What inspired that one?
Who's the nut who said, go out and start a podcast or two?
That would be Mr. Ortega.
That's Ray Ortega. So for some crazy reason, well, I listened to him, and that's what I did. Along the way, I've ended up helping out a number of other folks get aviation podcasts started. These are people that we'd met, through the Airplane Geeks podcast and so forth, and who ultimately went on to produce their own podcasts. And I offered myself up as a resource. I mean, we're just always happy to, like yourself, help other people. And I found that I was like saying the same things over and over and over again and giving people the same advice and information. So I just started writing it down into this blog. Plus, I wanted to try Squarespace, right? All the, many of the pundits had Squarespace as an advertiser and pushed it as easy. So I had to check that out. And after a while I thought, okay, I've got sort of the blogging part of it down. Let's see if we can make this thing podcast. And that was kind of a challenge. And you can base a podcast on Squarespace, but it's not particularly easy. And you don't have the benefit of all the WordPress plugins, that are out there, and you don't have the ecosystem of people who know podcasting on Squarespace the way you do for WordPress. So it's kind of a real challenge.
Yeah, it's the old, I always say, you can paint with peanut butter, but do you really want to? It's there are better tools involved there.
Absolutely.
Well, one of the things we wanted to talk about was podcast promotion. So I'm just going to lob that one over to your end. What are you doing to promote your podcast?
Not much.
No, just a little Twitter here, a little Facebook there.
Yeah. Well, and when I say that, I'm kind of serious because, as I look at people's comments in some of the online communities that are on the subject of podcasting, people tend to or seem to treat podcast promotion as something that they have to do. I don't mean something that has to be done. I mean something that they have to do as podcast producers. And while there's a certain amount of that, my perspective is a little bit different. What I try to do is create opportunities for other people to promote the podcast. Because, I mean, let's face it, this. Producing a podcast is a lot of work.
Yeah.
Planning the shows, getting the guests, getting them scheduled, the topics, post-production, all that stuff. That's a lot of work. And if you lay promotion on top of that, it's almost too much. So if you can get other people to do the promotion for you, that's kind of an ideal situation.
That is a beautiful thing if you can do that. So how are you pulling that off? What tips and tricks do you have on that?
So, well, one group of other people who can promote for you are your listeners. Okay. Mm-hmm. And they can do that in a lot of different ways. They can do that in social media. So if you have followers and they're excited and engaged with your podcast, they'll promote it for you. I mean, sometimes you give them the sort of the information, and one little tip is if you write tweets, for example, about your show, about your podcast, make sure you don't make them too long so that they can be easily retweeted by others, where the others have some characters left over to add their own comments, right? That's something you want them to do. We originally, started with Twitter and found that for our audience, which is pilots and people in the aviation industry and aviation enthusiasts, a lot of them are in Twitter. And we got the buzz, we had the engagement in Twitter. A little bit later, we added in a Facebook page, and we have a pretty active community over there. I mean, we don't really have to do that much to keep the conversations going over there. Our listeners are doing it for us, and that's great. And we're starting with the Google Plus community now, which is showing some traction. Mm-hmm. But there's other ways to engage listeners in ways that gets them energized so that they promote your show for you. For example, in the content of our show, we do a couple of things. We have one of our co-hosts is an aviation historian. Oh. And this guy is just a phenomenal walking encyclopedia. And what he does is he picks an aircraft of the week to talk about. It's a weekly podcast. So in that segment, he talks about the history of that particular airplane. If, notable, designers or pilots or, actions of the plane, issues, safety issues, whatever it is that makes that plane interesting. And he got a brilliant idea, which was to let the listeners decide each week what's going to be the aircraft of the week for the following week. So each week at the end of his segment, he offers up 2 aircraft and then says to our listeners, okay, vote for one. And some of that happens on Twitter, but most of it happens on our Facebook page. We get like 300 views of just that one post on Facebook, where people are voting for, how about this plane? How about that plane? People are telling us stories about, how they flew that plane back in the 50s or, whatever it is. But it's engagement. And when your listeners are really engaged, they talk about you and they promote you. Other areas in the show, listener mail, listener recordings. We're always encouraging listeners to send in little recordings or comments and feedback, and we spend a lot of the show talking about those and building discussions around that mail. That brings in more engagement as well.
Absolutely, it's one of those things where, the time that person says, they call in or whatever they do, and they actually hear their voice. I don't know if you get this. Do you get emails from people going, wow, I was so amazed when I actually heard my voice on your podcast? And I'm like, look, you sent it in. What do you think I was going to do with it? And they then tell their friends, hey, listen, I'm on a podcast. And, that then just, once they find out that, wow, it's that easy to get my voice on the podcast, they usually then call back in. So that's great.
Do.
Yeah.
They do. Yeah, we have several. There's sort of a core group that we're almost certain to hear from each week. But there are, many others that do send in their thoughts and their comments or ideas, and we include them in the show. Another group of people that can promote your podcast for you is guests. Now, we have a notable industry guest each week on the podcast, and I mean they can be great sources of promotion activity after the show, because when they're on, they're likely to let their network know that, hey, I was on this Airplane Geek show. You can listen to me. Here's the link. And so the guests have become particularly strong people for the podcast. You use them for that purpose, because a lot of times they have networks that are much more expansive than yours. A great, they're not always this dramatic, but a few months ago, we had an individual on from basically an owners group. I mean, this organization has something like 400,000 members in the U.S., not to mention international. All right, so it was a great show. It was a great episode. We had a great conversation with this guy. And so what happens afterwards? Well, he tells others about his experience with us. Our downloads went through the roof after that episode. So, I mean, you don't want to select your guests solely based on the size of their network, but it is a factor.
Right. Now, I do have a question. When you have an interview, where do you position that in your podcast? Is it the beginning, the middle, the end? Does it vary?
No, it's about a third of the way in. Okay. We have a pretty rigid sequence of segments. We start with a news segment, and our guests, it depends on the guest. In the news segment, we talk about the aviation news from the past week.
Right.
And depending on the specialization of our guest, a lot of them can talk to those news stories. And that's great, because particularly if it's like an author who maybe is sort of ultimately selling a book, it gives the audience a way to get to know the guest, before we get to that point.
Right.
And so that works really well. Then the second segment is the guest segment, where we just have a focused conversation with the guest. And then after that, we go on to a couple of other segments.
Very cool. The reason I ask, I just thought if these people are promoting your show, if they then have to say, well, I'm at the 32-minute mark or something like that, or if you're putting their interview up front, but it sounds like the good news is your guest in this case is also obviously involved in aviation, so anybody they're sending over here is probably going to enjoy that news section.
Yeah, in most cases. In some cases, you're absolutely right. The guests may be so specialized that their network is not going to be interested in the other segments of the show so much. So what I'll do then is after the show, after we publish the episode, and I send that email to the guests, thanking them once again for participating, and here's the link to the blog post. Sometimes in that case, I'll say, and your segment starts at, so many minutes and seconds into the show. Sometimes what we'll do also is, where it's appropriate, is we'll just take out their interview segment, their section of the whole show, and create a separate MP3 of just that, and make that available to our guests. Sometimes they like to put that on their a link on their website or their blog page or whatever.
Sure. That
points to just the interview portion. Of course, we put a little not really a promo, but a mention at the beginning and the end that you're listening to the Airplane Geeks podcast, blah blah blah.
Yep, little branding there never hurts.
Right.
Very cool. Now, so one of the things I know you attended, I think you attended the last Podcasters Roundtable, speaking of Ray Ortega, where they were talking about how the fact that, you, as you've mentioned, it is a lot of work to create the podcast. And by the time you do that and then start trying to go out and find people and tell them about your podcast and things like that some people just get burnt out. And one of the things that kind of came up to me as I listened to that is, do you think it's more important, or which one do you think is more beneficial, going out and trying to build that audience? Or do you think if you just continue to put out great content, that will in itself be its own promotion and might actually be better than trying to go out and find your audience and beat on doors and leave business cards and, sample CDs and all that stuff?
That's a really, really good question, because it brings up a couple of points. One I would say is that good quality, good content, engaging content, good audio quality is sort of a prerequisite for it all. I mean, that's really where you should, I think, focus in the beginning. Get that down. If that's all you do, it can be enough. It's just you better be patient, because it'll take a long time. Might take a long time for the audience to build, but it can build organically. I would not recommend thinking about this, that someone go out and engage in a lot of additional promotion until you've got to the point where you have that quality and you have that great content, because otherwise it's wasted, and it might even hurt you. I mean, it's like when you start a new podcast after episode 1, do you go out there and splash the world with, hey, here I am, hello world, here's my new podcast? No, you probably shouldn't, because, your fourth podcast is going to be a lot better. And, if you get the word out, then the people who do respond and listen are much more likely to stick with you. So, get the basics down first, I think. And then you can look at other methods of promoting the podcast.
Yeah, absolutely. And then there are times, I have somebody right now that just got in new and noteworthy, and she has a horrible cold, and so she can't record any new episodes, and so she's like, I've got this spotlight on me, and I'm losing it. And I'm like, well, this is something to be said about having a couple in the can, that you can keep that production going along the way.
Yeah, that's true. And then that also, having something in the can lets you, cover for holidays or vacations and things like that. We do something we call, just to sort of key off that a little bit, something called bits and pieces. We have these bits and pieces episodes. So, for example, this past holiday season, Christmas and New Year's, because they're always on the same day of the week, fell on our weekly night to record the show, and so we weren't gonna do that. But we didn't want to leave our listeners without a show. So what we do is we put together a bits and pieces episode. This is where I tell all the co-hosts and all the contributors, go out and whatever you want to do, make a recording, interview someone, tell a story, whatever it is you want to do, obviously that fits within the theme of the show.
Right.
Do that, and then send me the audio file, and then I'll stitch them all together. Record some kind of intros and outros for each of the segments, and kind of put together a show where I don't have to do much work, and the workload is kind of distributed. So, that's kind of an alternative, or it might be an alternative for some people to having a whole show in the can, is, especially if you have multiple contributors like we do.
Well, that was going to be the thought here is, tell us a little bit about how you actually create an episode.
It starts with the guests, and that can be hard. I send out a lot of requests for people to be guests on the show. I find potential guests in a lot of different ways. One really good way is if your show is on a specific topic, and that's a topic that's reported in the press at all. And you should be following your topic anyway, but go out there and watch for who are the people who are quoted in the press a lot. For your topic, who does the New York Times or the Washington Post or CNN, seem to frequently have or is frequently quoted. These folks in their articles or in their broadcasts, and then go approach those people. They make great guests. They're already used to dealing with the quote press. They're already people who like to get their opinions out there and have opinions. Those folks make for terrific guests. So I mean, there's a lot of other things too, but that's kind of where it starts, and you have to look weeks and weeks in advance for guests, because you have their schedules and all. Once we have a guest for the episode, depending on the guest's area of expertise, we can kind of build a show around that. So I mentioned we talked about the news segment. We'll look for news items that are relevant to that guest or to that topic. Sometimes, we also have some contributors. We have a couple of guys in Australia who contribute a segment of the show, and a guy in the UK who does the same. And sometimes we coordinate with them to have like a theme for the whole show. But we don't do a lot of show planning in terms of like prepping the guest or planning questions or that kind of thing. We like to make it more of a conversation than a formal interview with our guest. And so we just let it roll. And, a lot of guests are people that we've never even talked to until, that evening when we were recording. And most of the time it works out pretty well. Sometimes, it's the guy isn't as dynamic as maybe you thought he would be or something like that. So, you win some, you lose some. Right. But so we're on Skype, obviously. We make the recording. After the show, I spend the next usually 2 evenings doing the editing and putting together all the segments and so forth, which doesn't take as long as it used to, because I think there's a couple of things, since we're not professional broadcast guys, we're just not that good at it. But over the years, you sort of start to improve and, develop some skills that allow you to spend less time editing the screw ups afterwards. Absolutely. But it takes time, but it's something to focus on. I almost always listen to the episode before it gets posted. Partly for a quality check, but also just to be a little bit self-critical and try to learn from what I did well, what I didn't do so well. Absolutely. And if you don't, I guarantee you the time you don't is the time you put up the episode. Oh, yes. I did this 2 weeks ago on one of my podcasts, and when I open up a project of mine, I have my intro and outro music at the beginning, and then I basically pop in the content and drag the outro to the end of that. And I forgot to do that and then published it. And so you got to hear my intro and my outro playing at the exact same time. And it was just this giant mess. And luckily, one of my listeners said, "Did you mean to do that?" And I'm like, no. So I went back and fixed it. But it's one of those where you're like, yeah, okay, the one time I don't listen to the episode is the time that you put the intro and outro on top of each other. So yeah, it figures. It really does. And when something like that happens, you get this, I get this feeling in the pit of my stomach. It's like, oh my gosh, it's like, I'm so glad I caught that. Yeah. It doesn't happen often, but when it does happen, you sort of like to catch it. Yeah. Now I see on your website that you've got a lot of links to, whatever, Jet Wine and Plane Crazy. And so do you cross promote with a lot of these other kind of airplane geek podcasts? Those guys are either co-hosts or contributors to the show.
Okay.
So it's kind of a little network. You know, our contributors started out as just submitting something to the show. So in the case of the Plain Crazy Down Under guys, one of them sent in, I don't know, an email with some news items from the sort of the Asia Pacific Australia region that were part. And so we read those on the show. It was like think of it as like a listener email. Mm-hmm. And so we read it on the show. And then he'd send in another one, and we read that. And finally we said, you know what? This guy's got great stuff. It's good content. But us just reading his email, why don't we just ask him to make a recording and send that to us? Which he did, which worked out real well. And to make the long story short, now he and another guy down there have their own podcast, Plain Crazy Down Under. And so it's kind of like a sort of spawned off of
That's
ours.
right. It's the Jeffersons from All in the Family.
Exactly. Our European contributor, the same thing. The same thing. And now he's got his own podcast along with a couple other co-hosts there. So in effect, we sort of have like a little network that's not really officially a network. We talk about each other in our each of our podcasts. So there's that kind of cross promotion, and we get visitors coming from the other. We had a couple of emails just last week from some folks that wrote into our show saying, we heard about you on Plain Crazy Down Under, and that's how we came to see you. Promotions, cross promotions, I think can be a good thing, but sometimes I see people or hear people doing it when the promo that they're playing on their podcast doesn't have any relationship whatsoever to the topic of the podcast. It's like, well, I don't know what it's like. It's like, NFL on the Super Bowl, having something about, I'll say knitting. I know I get in trouble for using that as an example, but
right.
There needs to be some kind of a relationship that the listeners can draw. Otherwise, why mention it?
Right. It's the audience isn't going to get anything out of it, and that other podcaster probably isn't going to get any new listeners unless there's a lot of football fans that sit and watch the Super Bowl and bust out the knitting needles and go to town.
Yeah, there's probably more of them than we realize.
Right.
That's okay.
We're going to end up, Dave Jackson found with knitting needles in his back in a dark alley.
That's right.
Well, anything. I mean, those are all great ideas. Any other tips or insights you got? Those are all great.
One other way to get engagement and to get involved that occurs to me is in events. And we've been to a couple of events to the point now where we are invited to the Smithsonian each year, to the National Air and Space Museum for an event they hold each year. And we set up a table in the museum. We bring all the mics and the mixers, and we do a show. We make some recordings at the event. We have buttons, Airplane Geeks buttons that we give out, things like that. Everybody wins in a situation like that. You get some great content for an episode. It's different kind of content because you're in a completely different venue, so it's going to be different. You have a chance to meet many of your listeners. For us, when you're in an event like that, there's literally dozens of listeners that will come up and say hello and chat with us and that's another way to kind of get the engagement going in a way that they're going to talk about that and they're going to help promote your podcast. One thing that there's been some conversations about this lately in some of the online communities about SEO, and I've recently kind of drawn an analogy between SEO and like throwing chum on the water.
Okay.
You do it, you throw it out there, and hey, maybe somebody's something's interested in it, maybe not, you don't know. But when you do get a bite, when you do get a nibble, because you've someone has found you because they're searching for something. You don't know if that's really going to convert to a regular listener or a subscriber.
Right.
They may be looking for some specific subject. I know I've done this. I'll give you an example. Last night, in fact, I was doing some research on rechargeable batteries for flashlights.
Okay.
And I stumbled across a forum. There's a whole giant forum with tens of thousands of posts. It's all about flashlights. People who are fanatic about flashlights, different brands, different, LED versus, incandescent. And
right.
There's even a section in there for modders, people that I don't know, modify just all this stuff.
Wow.
All right. I found the information that I wanted.
Okay.
I will probably never go back there. All right. So, if you focus too much on Google juice and,
right.
SEO, I think it takes your eye off the ball. I think the ball that your eye should be on is what we said before, quality, content, and then, try to get engagement from your listeners and from your guests and from your co-hosts and from your contributors or whatever it is you have, whoever is associated in some way with the podcast, get them engaged in a way that, they talk about it and they promote you. That's really powerful.
Yeah. I just got tuned into Michael Hyatt's podcast. This Is Your Life, I think is the name of it. And I read his book Platform. If you haven't read it, I highly recommend it. And I noticed at the end of every single one of his podcasts, he ends it with a question. What do you think about such and such? Leave your comments on the blog post. So he's always calling his audience to come and engage at his website. And I was like, all right, I've taken official notice of that now. So.
Yeah, that's great. That's a great way to get people engaged. And, some of your listeners, won't bite, but a lot of them will. And that's great. It's only good for you.
Yeah. And there are times when, I will occasionally, if I'm bored, if I've gone somewhere traveling, maybe I'm teaching someplace and I'm bored in a hotel, I have been known to go to a Barnes and Noble and stuff a book or two with a business card as a way of promoting. But I also know that is officially throwing chum. I may never, ever get any kind of listener from that. And you have to be able to kind of identify that, okay, this is strictly throwing it on the wall kind of promotion, and it may lead to nothing at all. But on the other hand, if my choice is sitting in a hotel room and watching bad television,
it's a better option.
It's a better option. So that's the key. And I really think the more I listen to the Podcasters Roundtable, I'm like, really that the better time spent is, okay, what's going to be in the next episode? And in this case, after talking to you, how can I engage in my audience? And, if we go Seth Godin here, get your tribe involved in promoting your podcast. It's probably a better use of my time.
Yeah, absolutely. I really am enjoying the Podcasters Roundtable. It was a great idea. It's and it's different, and it's nice to hear people bounce different ideas, across each other and so forth, and get different perspectives at the same time on the same topic. I think it's really educational. You guys are doing a great job.
Yeah, he's Ray's one of my favorite people. He's just a great guy and does a great job, along with Daniel and everybody else. Everybody's been on there. I keep Corey from IVNV.com and Stu from all the Cincinnati guys. I got to meet in whatever it's called now. I was going to say Blog Media, whatever it is, the new media, the new world, the whatever it is, Expo. I got to meet those guys, and a lot of that came from the Podcasters Roundtable. So. I got one other question for you, because you are obviously an avid podcast listener. What makes you unsubscribe from a podcast?
Bad audio quality annoys me. Mm-hmm. If there's, I can put up with a little bit, and I do recognize, since I produce these things myself, that sometimes, Skype might be misbehaving seriously, or there may be other issues. But if it's consistently, kind of crummy audio quality, that's annoying. I also find annoying people who have podcasts, it's talk, not music, and one speaker's in the right ear and one speaker's in the left ear. That makes me crazy. I don't like that. And then you know what? Giggling, too much giggling. I mean, I laugh a lot. I know I do, but too much giggling, it starts to get to the point where it's like, let's pretend we're an adult.
You always border on the range of morning zoo. My favorite thing is when somebody says something and somebody's just like, bah! And you're like, really? It really wasn't that funny. And they just keep laughing and laughing. And then I feel like I'm an outsider. I'm like, did I miss something?
Yeah.
Exactly. Awesome. Well, I guess the other thing we should probably figure out is what kind of gear are you using?
Oh, boy. I tell people that you don't need much, but I keep accumulating more and more. So I started out with just simply a USB headset mic and the laptop, but that quickly progressed. So now I have a Heil PR40. I mean, that's my main, I'll call it studio mic. I have a Sennheiser mic a dynamic mic that I use for field interviews and when I'm out. I have a pretty simple Behringer mixer, a 1204. It's an analog mixer. It's not a digital mixer. So I have a little Behringer, whatever this thing is, UCA 202 or whatever that is the interface to the USB on the laptop. I record with a digital audio recorder because I'm different, sort of a contrarian, hence my Squarespace experience. I record on a Marantz PMD 620.
There you go.
Which it is dynamite. I really like this a lot. I got it because at the time Marantz had a $100 rebate, which put it kind of in the same price, same that $300 price range. So much of the time it costs more. I have a little tube preamp that I use just because I like tubes and that sounds cool.
Okay. That's a good reason.
I have my iPad on a stand that I use for the soundboard. So I use the app I use is Resounder. Resounder, which is pretty good.
Okay.
Pretty good. The trouble with using an iOS device for the soundboard to your PC is putting sound clips and, in our case, pre-recorded segments and things on there. Right now you can do it through iTunes, but I don't know. I hate that. You can also transfer from the PC to the iPad if they're on the same wireless network. You can do it wirelessly, except that I found that doesn't work in a hotel wireless situation. But at home, it's fine. And then that's mostly it. I have one of those big monster cable power conditioners that has like about a zillion or at least 14 electrical outlets on it, and everything's plugged into that. And in my studio, I'm standing in a storage room. I mean, there's piles of boxes and junk everywhere. There isn't a flat surface, of more than about a square foot anywhere in this room, which is great. I stand. So my laptop, the mixer, the mic stand is on an ironing board.
I was going to say, you're the ironing board guy. I remember this now. Yes. That's an awesome idea.
Yeah, because you can raise it, lower it to the height, whatever.
Well, and it's super easy to clamp a microphone on that, too. If you have one of those swinging arms or whatever, it makes that easy.
That's exactly what I have. Yeah. So I have that. Like I said, the iPad's on a stand. I also have some boxes on the other side of the ironing board where I have a second monitor. So I have my laptop monitor. I have a second monitor where I can put. I find that if I don't have in front of me written down or on a screen somewhere the name of the guest and their website or what it is they do, for sure I'll have like a senior moment in the middle of the podcast and forget the guy's name. So I put that kind of stuff up there.
Okay, thanks for talking to us, Steve. And he's like, actually, I'm Scott.
Right. I know.
I did have one other question, though. I have notes here because I've been taking notes while I'm listening. You said you do voting on Facebook?
Yes.
For anyone who is not Facebook literate, is there some sort of like voting script, or are people just leaving comments to vote?
They're leaving comments, yeah.
Okay. Keep it simple.
Yeah, keep it simple. It also lets people, if they want to, tell little stories or little reasons for why they're making the choice for the next week's Aircraft of the Week, as they are.
Right. Which then becomes great content.
Yeah, exactly. Right.
Very cool. Awesome. Yeah. All right, my man. Well, I'm so glad we finally got to connect. And
me too. Sorry to be such a difficult guest to you.
Oh, no, it wasn't. Well, we had that silly thing called the holidays to get through and, everything else. So I wish you continued success with airplanegeeks.com. And, of course, you can find his other podcast over at podcastingpassion.com. Oh, let's get a last 5 and 5 out of you before we let you get out the door.
Let's see. This is always good because, sometimes I worry people say what their favorite 5 are. And It's like you tell them, it's supposed to be the last 5.
That's 5 that you listen to, right.
That's more telling. I think it's going to be a mixture of like tech kinds of podcasts and some newsy stuff. This is no lie. The one that I'm listening to right now is your last episode.
There you go.
I love
that was a fun one.
Yeah, and I love the conversation. I have about 10 minutes or so left on it. I love the conversation about the guy that was the atheist who was concerned about there being too much Christianity in your show. I thought the way you handled that was great.
Well, I appreciate that. I've actually got a lot of feedback. Well, again, thank you so much for coming on the show, and continued success in all you do.
Absolute pleasure. Thank you very much, Dave.
There you go. Cool stuff, huh? Loving it. Yeah. Find him again at airplanegeeks.com and podcastingpassion.com.
If you like what you hear, then go tell somebody. If you like what you hear, then go tell somebody. If you like what you hear, then go tell somebody. Oh, Lord, go tell somebody. Yeah, go tell someone.
And as we head out the door, I want to give a quick shout out to averagejoepoker.com. Now, this is a website. Let me give you an example. Person contacted me on Friday morning, said, hey, I've got to get this podcast up before basically the Super Bowl. And so it's Friday, get it up before Sunday. Contacted me Monday. It was up by Friday evening-ish, late afternoon. So because he had no website. So if you have no website, you want to start a podcast, you got your topic, you're ready to go, and send me an email with the phrase quick start in the title. And here's what happens. I will send you a link to order your hosting. It's $7 a month. I'll give you a coupon. You can save on the hosting. You can buy a year, you can buy a month, and I will earn a commission from that. I will then set up WordPress for you, install all the plugins, and give you a free month at the School of Podcasting. And if you're like, but Dave, I already have a website. I want to start a podcast. What about us? Use the coupon LISTENER, LISTENER, when you sign up, and you will save on your first month at the School of Podcasting. Remember that every month after your first month is only $4.99. And speaking of shout outs, want to give a shout out to booktourradio.com and refocuspodcast.com. These are two people that are using podcastclicks.com. That is the podcast only banner rotation. We had, I had to do some research on this. We had 14,837,913 impressions in 2012, and we delivered 182,000 clicks to Podcaster's website. It is free promotion. Why is it free? Because every now and then a banner for the School of Podcasting is going to show up. So if you're interested in that, check it out at podcastclicks.com. And of course, if you're looking to start a podcast, check me out, schoolofpodcasting.com. We've got step-by-step tutorials. We've got awesome resources like PageLines, like Builder. We've got the tutorials to show you how to do all that fun-filled stuff. And of course, you got little old me, your personal podcast coach, to help you along the way. So I want to thank you so much for tuning in. Let me remind you that it's time to start living a life worth podcasting about. And I will see you next week with another episode of the School of Podcasting's Morning Announcements. And until then, class is dismissed. God bless. You can also use the voicemail button out of the side. I actually had to take a breath. Or leave a comment out on our blog at logicalloss.com. Lest I forget to tell you this, you can find everything that we talk about today out at School of... Did I say Logical Loss? I did, didn't I?